And welcome back, Bears fans, to another episode of the Bears Brothers podcast. And welcome to our second installment of our preview for the Chicago Bears 2017 season opener against the defending NFC champs, the Atlanta Falcons. I'm your host, Will DeWitt, and today I'm accompanied by my two Bears brothers, Brandon Hazlett and Nicholas Moriano. Brothers, we're only 3 days away from some Bears football. How are you holding up? Because I, for one, am finding it difficult to focus throughout today just because I am that excited to kick off the season.
Yeah, since we talked this afternoon about doing the preview show, I've been antsy all day.
Yeah, it's been honestly very hard to focus at work all day because I'm like Nick and I were talking about a couple minutes ago. It's exciting to talk about a game that's going to count coming up here in just a couple of days. Right, Nick?
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, it's National Beer Lovers Day. The start of the football season's here. Guys, this is great. Football is finally back. Sunday, okay, if you go to church, that's great, but Sunday has meaning. We can watch football on Sundays. It's great.
Yes, no, it really, really is. So trust me when I say we have a ton to get to today. So I'm not going to waste any more time. We're just going to dive right into the dog pile and begin by discussing real quick this Bears roster, because a lot of you wanted us to do a Bears reaction show for the roster. Unfortunately, we all kind of get that situated just preparing for this week. So let's quickly go ahead and before we start the game preview, discuss this Bears roster. So guys, I'm just going to open up this discussion about this roster and of course the depth chart. What were some like the biggest surprises in terms of like the overall roster, or maybe someone on the depth chart wasn't exactly where you thought they were going to end up? Brandon, I'll go to you first.
I'm surprised that they kept Deion Bush over BW Webb. I know neither of them really looked that great in the last game, but when you kind of compare the two in that last game, if that's what it came down to, Deion Bush was on the field for all three of those blown coverages that we've seen later in the game. So I'm not saying that it's his fault at all, because I don't know what the assignments were, but I just thought that was kind of fishy that they ended up keeping Deion Bush over a guy who sort of impressed me in BW Webb as a somewhat overall solid cornerback.
Yeah, I mean, of course, safety versus a corner, so maybe the Bears wanted to keep an extra safety there as well. And of course, I think Ryan Pace is more prone to keeping his own draft pick, but he's also shown with Jeremy Langford out the door that he's not afraid to send one out as well. But Nick, over to you. What are some of your surprises?
Surprises, I wouldn't say it's a surprise, but you notice that the Bears have 4 tight ends on the active roster right now. And I predicted that would be the case. And that's because that's a strength of this team. And especially with Cameron Meredith going down, they need to play their strength. They have 4 tight ends. And what was pretty surprising for me was just that Pernell McPhee didn't end up on the PUP list.
Yes.
But let's talk about McPhee real quick. I mean, we've heard that he's in the best physical shape he's in, right?
Yep.
But he has to play limited snaps. And Vic Fangio actually had a great press conference today saying, yeah, I heard my medical people say he's in the best physical shape, but he has to play limited snaps. Don't trust those people. He said something like that. But, that was surprising. It's a good thing for the Bears that McPhee could possibly go on Sunday. We don't know yet. But, yeah, that was pretty surprising.
Yeah, for me, McPhee was one. You mentioned the tight ends. I think for me, in terms of tight ends, the one that stuck out was that Dean Sims is actually listed as the Bears' starting tight end over Zach Miller. For me, I thought that Sims was going to be the number 2 guy. So to me, that was kind of a surprise. And you mentioned Pernell McPhee. I think another one is Danny Trevathan, him being ready to go so quickly, only 10 months, after his injury occurred. So I think both McPhee and Trevathan, if they're able to give it a go come Sunday, I think those are 2 big surprises for Bears fans because we haven't seen anything out of them all camp or all preseason. So hopefully they don't have too much rust to knock off. Going back to this roster real quick, is there anything that you would have done differently? Because for me, I maybe would have played it safe with Pernell McPhee and put him on the PUP because, even though we need a player like that, with someone with such a history of knee injuries, I think some extra time just to, work on some more muscle strength and just taking his time getting back into the swing of things might not have been a bad idea. But other than that, I think maybe Tanner Gentry not making the active roster for me was another thing that I would have done differently. But at the same time, Trey McBride, he's an intriguing wide receiver himself. Nick, over to you. Anything that you would have done differently if you were Ryan Pace, John Fox?
Done differently. I was really surprised that Michael Byrne made this list. I know that the Bears last year had a fullback in and out of the 53-man roster, but yeah, Tanner Gentry is a very popular one. I'm glad the Bears got him back on the practice squad, but
yes, me too.
With the lack of depth at wide receiver, maybe they could have used a guy like that who's been there all camp, and I know Trey McBride is a guy they like, obviously, because they brought him here, but Gentry was here for the entire, length since we picked him up. So that was pretty surprising.
Brandon, how about you? Any surprises?
I don't know necessarily that it's something that I would have changed or done differently because I don't know how closely that the front office looked at the waiver wire. But I would have looked a little deeper into some of the pass rushers, primarily at outside linebacker. Sorry, cutting Houston, I get with the injury, but just since this is a deep pass rushing core for the Bears, I would have think that they may have wanted to look a little deeper, especially since we talked about Purnell. He's had 10 sacks and I think 23 games total here for the Bears. His 2 seasons here, and he had 7.5 in 16 games with Baltimore. So, me and Nick kind of talked about this last season, how he's kind of underachieved what we thought he would do. And I thought maybe they would look a little more aggressively there, not necessarily to upgrade, but to kind of make up for the lack of production that we thought maybe he would have produced.
Sure. All right. So one question, I know it's a fan question as well, that we'll get to later on in the show, but I had it in the notes, so I just want to hit it here. Looking at this roster, is there anyone who is not currently pegged in a starting role today that you believe is going to be a starter before the season is said and done? Brandon, right back to you. Who do you got?
I had Kyle Fuller because we don't really know what Marcus Cooper is necessarily going to do. So maybe we see him struggle early on. I hope we don't, but I would assume that Kyle Fuller is going to be the guy to take over a starting spot that isn't starting right now.
All right, Nick, how about you?
Jonathan Bullard, that's an easy one for me. I mean, Mitch Unrein is a guy who we've already expressed our opinions about him. He's there, but he's not there. So Jonathan Bullard, he showed flashes in the preseason, and that's good because he didn't do that in his first season with the Bears. So I think as the season goes on, he will earn himself a starting spot.
What about Trubisky, guys? Don't we think that he's going to end up starting before the season's all said and done? I mean, I know the majority of Bears fans do. I, for one, think that it's a definite possibility. But no, I actually had John Bullard as well. But I think Trubisky starting is obviously something that's becoming more and more likely, especially now with him being moved up to the number 2 quarterback. I think the Bears are showing that they're trusting him a little bit more and that he is going to be the next man up whenever that situation would arise. But that's going to do it for our roster breakdown. So up next, since that's all taken care of, it's time to finally go on record, and let's predict the Bears' record for the end of the season, because we've, again, had a lot of requests for that all offseason, but I told people, until I know who's on this roster, I'm not going to predict how many games this team's going to win. So, Brandon, over to you. What's the Bears' record going to be this season?
I had to look up what some of the lines are for teams, and I seen that the Bears on oddshark.com where they put the under-over at 5.5, and I'm going to take the over on that. I think that they can beat the Browns, the 49ers, the Saints, and pick up a couple division wins, so that puts you at 5. But then other possible games that are going to be close, I have the Steelers because they like to play to their competition level. The last 4 regular season games, the Steelers beat their opponents by a touchdown or less, which include the Bills, the Browns, the Bengals, and the Ravens. And then I have the Panthers. If you can keep Cam Newton in the pocket, his completion percentage is 52% last season. And of the 33 quarterbacks I found who had more than 200 passing attempts, he was last in that category as far as completion percentage. And the Ravens are definitely beatable too. They played 12 games that were decided by a touchdown or less. So I think I'm going to put it at 7-9. I think they surprise some people, but I don't think they get quite to 500 yet.
Get out of town. I had 7-9 too. I didn't actually look at the specific, get down into as many details as you. It's just kind of one of those gut feelings looking at the schedule, and this is my prediction. If Mike Glennon actually starts all 16 games, with Trubisky, you never know. I think he can be that difference maker to maybe bump this up to 8-8 or maybe 9-7. No, not kidding. The winning record would be nice, but honestly, if we can just get close to 500 after coming off that 3-13 season, I mean, that's showing me progress and that we're heading in the right direction. And I think that would be what I will call a successful 2017 campaign for the Chicago Bears. We can get near that 7-9 mark. Nick, over to you. I know you were having a hard time figuring this out.
Yeah, and yesterday when we did our little questionnaire on Reddit, I looked at this the schedule, and I kept finding myself, more than 3 wins on the season because what I was predicting earlier. I think they win 6 games. I think it's very there's some winnable games on here. Brandon, you mentioned the Ravens being one of them. I think the Panthers are also one of them, but I see 6 wins. And would 6, 7 wins be enough for John Fox to keep his job for another season? Maybe.
Well, that's a whole different.
That's a whole nother question. But yeah,
topic.
I know. But I'm just saying. I'm surprised to find myself to see that the Bears are capable of winning some games, on their roster. With how bad it starts, I could still see 6 wins as, a reachable mark for the Bears to get.
When I think about last year, I just remember how well I thought we actually played our divisional opponents, the Lions, the Vikings, and the Packers. And I think that this season, with the retooled defense, relying a little bit more on the run game, I think that we can actually steal a couple more of those season, which, would bump that record up for sure. But all right, guys, one last prediction for the season before we actually start breaking down this Bears-Falcons matchup on Sunday. Predict the Bears' most valuable player by the end of the year, or our MVP. Nick, I'll go right back to you. Who's going to be your prediction to be the MVP come the end of the year?
Most valuable Bear, I'll go with Leonard Floyd. I think he's going to, with another year under his belt, if he could stay healthy, he's easily capable of getting 12.5 sacks of 15 sacks this season.
Which I think would constitute as most valuable Bear, and at least in my book. Brandon, over to you. Who would be your MVP prediction?
Yeah, I think there's a couple defensive players that you can give it to, but I think the offense is going to kind of surprise some people this year. So I'm going to give it to Jordan Howard. I think he's going to be a strong, steady rock for this offense that they really need to succeed. So I'm going to make him my most valuable Bear.
Hey, me as well, Brandon. We must have been peeking at some notes because I, too, have Jordan Howard. I think good things are in store from the second year back out of Indiana. This offense is going to run through him, so he's going to be relied upon heavily, which, of course, is going to just make his value go up for this team, which, of course, I believe the only thing I need to see out of Jordan Howard is I need to see him reach pay dirt a few more times than 6. I think that's the one knock, that he wasn't able to find his way to the end zone. But that said, that was more a Bears offensive problem, not a Jordan Howard problem last year. So hopefully this season things change. But guys, that's it for the season preview, the overall that we just did. So let's just start previewing this game that's coming up in 3 days, shall we? And let's begin by discussing this Bears defense. This is going up last year's most potent offense, which put up 33.8 points per game, which was the 7th most all-time and more than double the amount points per game that the Bears were able to put up last season. Ooh, I mean, that's scary. So, okay. Atlanta has a 1-2 punch in the backfield that has me worried. Devonta Freeman, Tevin Coleman, they combined to be that deadly weapon for that Falcons offense. Last year, they averaged about 4.6 yards per carry and way more than 9 touchdowns combined. I don't know why I put that. I think one of them had 9. I think that's Tevin Coleman, and Freeman had more. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but this Bears defense, a year ago, we talked about it all season, all off season, that they had a hard time stopping the run. They gave up 4.4 yards per carry and 122 yards per game on the ground. But I believe that this run defense proved in the preseason that they are much more stout than a year ago. They only gave up 3.3 yards per carry, and I think the number even goes down when you're just talking about the Bears starters. So going back to the main question here, guys, is how can we stop that Atlanta rushing attack on Sunday? And Nick, I'll go to you first.
That's going to be a tough task for them, because if you try to make the Falcons one-dimensional, well, they can kill you in either the running game or the passing game. And we said it earlier that our strength in this Bears defense is the front 7, but they did struggle to stop the run last season. To stop them, it's going to be tough. You have to stack the box if you want to try to stop the run. And then if you do that, you're leaving yourself one-on-one possibly with a Julio Jones, and Matt Ryan's going to light you up. But to stop them, that's going to be a tough task. Well, I don't know if you can stop the Atlanta Falcons offense, but you can try to make it one-dimensional, and you just got to make sure that one dimension, either it's the running game or the passing game, doesn't overtake your defense. But it all depends of how long the Bears defense is really out there. So that's going to be my biggest issue going into this game, is if this Bears defense is out there way too much, Atlanta's just going to light them up.
No, I mean, I agree there for sure. Brandon, we have Darrell Freeman, Danny Trevathan should be back. But I think guys like, Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman, maybe Mitch Unrein, but I'm more thinking like along the lines of like a John Bullard or Roy Robertson Harris, those big guys up front that can really, clog the holes. And hopefully Freeman, he's a tackling machine, can get in there and take down these ball carriers before they do too much damage. How do you see the Bears at least limiting the Falcons' rushing attack?
I think kind of what we talked about on Tuesday with Aaron, the guy who runs a podcast, Falcons podcast, kind of like what we do. When we were talking about mismatches in the middle of the trenches, he said, if Goldman and Akeem Hicks can establish their presence early on, that's going to be important, not just in the passing game, but in the rush defense as well. And like you said, the Bears improved in defending the rush. In the preseason, they only gave up 75.8 yards per game on average. on the ground during the preseason. So I'm frankly more concerned with how they use the running backs out of the backfield in the passing game than I am the rushing game right now.
Oh, that's fair. I mean, the good thing is Darrell Freeman is the top returning top coverage linebacker, at least according to Pro Football Focus grades. So that's going to help us in that aspect. But sticking with this front seven guys, let's flip it around to the pass game, the pass rush. What do you anticipate out of the Bears in terms of pass rush against the Falcons on Sunday? Nick, I'll go right back to you on this one. What do you anticipate?
Well, I think that Leonard Floyd's going to have a big game, and it all actually starts with Akeem Hicks and what they can do. You guys talked about in your podcasts earlier this week is 6th-round pick Wes Switzer. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yes.
The guard, or he's going to be going a 6th-round pick. He's going to be going against Eddie Goldman, Akeem Hicks. If they can get pressure up the middle, and you have Leonard Floyd, Willie Young coming off the edge, Matt Ryan's going to have to escape out of that pocket. That's going to be a huge matchup. And, Leonard Floyd, he's quicker than a lot of the tackles. Obviously, he has that quick first step, and we only assume that he's going to do better things in year 2. So you got to assume that Vic Fangio is going to give Matt Ryan and this Atlanta offense multiple looks, and you got to hope that something, gives in on this Atlanta Falcons offense.
No, you do. I mean, at least the good news is last year, the Falcons kind of struggled a little bit in terms of protecting, Matt Ryan. They gave up the 11th most sacks last season with 37. And on the flip side, the Bears had the 12th most sacks on defense, which coincidentally enough was 37 sacks. So, Brandon, in terms of maybe numbers, how many times do you anticipate seeing Matt Ryan on the turf come Sunday?
I don't think it's necessarily so much how many times they get to him. I think it's more about creating the disruption and throwing off the timing more than anything. Because we already talked about the mismatch. And even if we see blitz packages with Darrell Freeman and Danny Trevathan, kind of like what we've seen with Nick Kwiatkowski and Christian Jones in Game 4 of the preseason with the Browns, where both of them blitz that A-gap, it's something to create the disruption. I don't know how much we'll see that. How much do I anticipate Matt Ryan hitting the turf? A couple times at least, I would think. But it's more about creating a disruption and throwing off his timing as well as the receivers.
Nick, am I crazy to think that week 1 is not too early to see some good things out of John Bullard and Roy Robertson Harris, some impact plays from them? Because I think, especially in short yardage situations, we saw it from both of them. I think they would come in place of Mitch Unrein, say 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 4th and 1, in that sort of situation. What do you anticipate out of those two young guys coming out Sunday?
I think that it's very capable for those guys to actually have an impact in this game. Mitch Unrein, again, like he's not the best player, but Bullard has that explosiveness right off the line of scrimmage. And when it's near the goal line situations where you assume that the Atlanta Falcons are going to be in a couple of those situations come Sunday, you want a guy who's going to be able to beat his man off the line of scrimmage. And Bullard's a guy that's what he did in college at Florida. That's what we saw him do a little bit in the preseason. So definitely he's a guy that can do that. And with Roy Robertson Harris, he's just so lengthy. You can get your hands on opposing offensive linemen, shove them out the way. So yeah, those guys can definitely have an impact over maybe a Mitch Unrein, who's just isn't the best quality player.
Right. And let's not forget to mention just how important the pressure, like Brandon said, if this front seven can create, disrupting the timing of these Falcons wide receivers and the passing game, because you have guys like Julio Jones, Gabriel, Sanu, a lot of weapons in this offense. So the ability for this Bears front seven to create some pressure, force Matt Ryan to either hold on to the ball too long or maybe get rid of it too quickly, is just going to play into the Bears' favor. But guys, last season, another thing I was looking at were 3rd down conversions. And last year, the Falcons were top 10 on 3rd down conversions as they moved the sticks and about 43.6% of their 3rd down attempts. But we know here in Chicago all too well that the struggles that the Bears had last season, getting opposing offenses off the field. Chicago allowed opponents to convert on about 40% of their 3rd downs, which is in the bottom 3rd of the league. So obviously, last year's defense didn't get a lot of help from last year's offense. But that said, it's a whole new year, a whole new slate, so I'm not going to try to judge them too much off of that. But what's your current level of concern for this Bears 3rd down defense come Sunday? And what needs to happen for them to succeed and get Atlanta's offense off the field? Brandon, I'll go to you.
My level of concern is moderate, I guess, is how I'll put it. Atlanta is very versatile with how they can beat you on offense, because they can either get it to Julio Jones, who can beat you with speed, or he can beat you jumping over the top, as well as I mentioned earlier with the running backs out of the backfield, just a way you wouldn't expect necessarily a team to beat you, but I thought that was critical in their playoff run. So getting help from the offense being on the field more, winning that time of possession like they talked about in the preseason for the Bears is going to be crucial, I think, for helping the Bears get stay fresh on third downs, especially late in the game when I think it's going to matter more.
Exactly. And I like what I saw in the preseason. We're going back to Roy Robinson Harris and John Bullard, even Eddie Goldman, Akeem Hicks, those guys were just bursting through the gaps in terms of third down, third and short. And I think in those certain short situations, that's what we need them to do. And then those certain longs, that's what I'm looking at Pernell McPhee, Willie Young, Leonard Floyd, to get some of that pressure and Matt Ryan. And if they can do that, and if the offense, we'll talk about the Bears offense a little bit in the show, but if the offense can keep this defense fresh, I think that's just going to make a world of difference with this game. But Nick, I'm going to ask you a different question for the sake of time. And, as we know, we talked about the Bears announcing their depth chart, and they have named their secondary starters. At corner, we have Prince Amukamara, given that he plays on Sunday. He's still, nagged by that injury. Then you have Marcus Cooper, and then you have Bryce Callahan in the nickel. And then at safety, you got Quentin Demps and Eddie Jackson. But I'm hearing a lot of questions from fans asking, what should we expect out of maybe Kyle Fuller, Adrian Amos, and maybe Crevan LeBlanc, guys who, we've seen out there on the field? How do you anticipate, Nick? What do you think? I'm trying to think how to word this. How often do you think we're going to see them out there in the game? Do you expect the Bears to sub them out frequently, or do you expect it only maybe if an injury would occur?
I think Kyle Fuller may, we don't know the significance of Amukamara's injury. We don't know if he's actually going to be the one starting on Sunday. So we could potentially be seeing Kyle Fuller as the opposite corner of Marcus Cooper. So there's a good chance we'll see a lot of him. The only way I really see Amos coming into this game, or obviously he's going to play on special teams, but if Eddie Jackson maybe has he blows a coverage or does something that's uncharacteristic of him that he hasn't done all preseason, I think Eddie Jackson, Quinn Demps are going to get most of your reps at safety. But Bryce Callahan, I like him. He's a guy, when he's healthy, he is capable of covering that, that slot receiver. And he's also listed as the #1 punt returner on this team. So Crevan LeBlanc, if they, they go up to 4 or 5 wide receiver packages, that's where you'll see him on the field. But I think out of those 3 guys you mentioned, Amos, LeBlanc, and Fuller's going to be the one who's definitely going to see the field most, especially if Amukamara is not able to go on Sunday.
Exactly. And Brandon, say Amukamara can't go on Sunday. Who would you rather have on, say, Julio Jones? Would you rather have Cooper or perhaps Kyle Fuller?
I'm going to say Kyle Fuller, I think, with the experience that he's had. I know he didn't play last year, so I think him and Marcus Cooper have technically the same amount of experience. But just because we know what Kyle Fuller can do, we've seen it firsthand. I know he's not necessarily back to that form that we've seen when he was replacing Charles Tillman a few years ago. But just because we know what we can do, I think that's kind of your safe bet right now is put Kyle Fuller on there.
All right. I was thinking about, Bryce Callahan versus Gabriel. I think that's going to be a big matchup come Sunday. And Bryce Callahan, he's going to have his hands full, but I think he's up for the challenge. I think that's going to do it for the Bears secondary talk. So another theme here on defense that I wanted to touch on real quick, was just that they didn't bend. They bend, but they didn't break last year, and that was even more true at home. Last season, the Bears defense was 5th best, limiting opponents once they reached the red zone. At Soldier Field, the Chicago Bears only allowed opponents to score touchdowns once they reached the red zone at 41% of the time, which is a pretty solid number. I believe that was 5th in the league. But Atlanta, of course, being that high-flying attack that they had last season, was one of the better offenses in the red zone, scoring touchdowns on 65% of those red zone trips. So it's kind of a strength versus strength here. So, Nick, how do you see this playing out on Sunday?
That's going to be, that's a question. I think I actually looked into where the Falcons' 5 losses from last season, and a common thing for teams that were able to beat the Falcons is that they were actually better than them in third down efficiency. We'll get more into that on the offense, but the Bears, it all depends. I think, again, it goes back to the offense. How much time are they going to give the defense in between series to actually rest up to go against this high-octane Atlanta Falcons offense? Because if there's not a lot of rest in between, I don't care how good you are on third down or good in the efficiency in the red zone. Atlanta just has so many weapons that, one-on-one, you can't have any one of our corners one-on-one with Julio Jones. So it's all going to depend on how much rest that this defense is actually getting from the offense.
Right. And I don't have to explain to you or even the listeners just how important it would be for the Bears to limit Atlanta to field goals and not touchdowns once they reach, that area of the field for an offense as Atlanta, who's the ability to put up points in bunches. If we can just limit them, half of those, if we can hold them to 50% in the red zone in terms of reaching the end zone, I think that would be a huge boost in terms of our probabilities of winning this game. But that said, that's all I had. I want to open up to you guys. Did I miss anything? Anything else you want to discuss in terms of the Bears defense heading into this matchup?
Trying to think. I mean, we hit on a lot of things. Obviously, they have to be. You're not going to play one-on-one with Julio Jones. I think they're going to have to play a lot of zone. If you blitz the Atlanta Falcons, I think that's going to kill you. So they just got to be able to get to the quarterback with their front. Leonard Floyd and Willie Young have to have great games. And if Pernell McPhee comes in, he has to be able to make an impact. They have to be able to pressure up the middle with Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman. It's going to take a lot from the Bears defense to, get the Atlanta Falcons offense rattled.
Brandon, how about you? Anything else you want to add about this Bears D?
We talked about this on Tuesday. This is where games are won and lost, is in the trenches, and I'm going to say it again this week. So that's 2 times this week that games are won and lost here, and I think that really the big mismatch that you have to look for is Eddie Goldman and Akeem Hicks on Wes Schweitzer, the right guard for Atlanta. I think if you can somehow get that additional pressure right there at that spot, as well with Leonard Floyd and Willie Young come around the edges, I think that you pose a good threat to slow down this Falcons offense. But like we've already established, there's just so many weapons that they have. It's going to be a tough task, but I think it's a healthy one they're up to look for.
Exactly. No, it's going to be a tough task. And honestly, we're talking about just how tough this is. It's great to get this tough test, here in week 1 to learn a little bit more about these Bears, to see what they're going to at least get to see where they stand in terms of, Super Bowl caliber teams from the get-go. And if they get some confidence thinking, we can hang around with these guys, I think that can also play large in this team's confidence moving forward for the rest of the year. But guys, up next, we're going to transition to talking about Mike Glennon and this Bears offense and what they'll have to do in order to not only help out this Bears defense, like we said, but also come away with the victory on Sunday. But first, I need to tell you a little bit about our sponsor, SeatGeek. Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated, but there's a better, simpler way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There's nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. As you guys know, I had the app on my phone. It's by far the easiest way I've been able to shop for tickets. I can be anywhere in just a few taps, instantly find some seats. I just looked. There's still some amazing deals for this Bears-Falcons game. So if you're listening, you're wanting to go to this game, there's still some good tickets left. And Brandon, I know you just used SeatGeek for the first time. How was it?
It was great. In fact, I actually went back and used it again. I went and look to see for tickets for next Friday for Luke Bryan, Granger Smith, and Brett Eldridge down in Indianapolis, and got some great deals there. And then shortly after there, I just went and looked at pretty tickets, and I got a ticket for a friend to go with me. So great deals all around. I enjoyed using SeatGeek. It was really easy to use.
And I know that you're my friend when I know you didn't offer that ticket to me to a Purdue game. So I appreciate that. But real quick, SeatGeek is designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever. Make SeatGeek your go-to app for finding the best deals on every type of tickets, from sports and concerts to comedy and theater. Best of all, our listeners get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. I know Brandon just used this promo code. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code BEARS today. That's promo code BEARS, BEARS, for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All righty. Well, this is Will DeWitt, joined by Brandon Hazlett and Nicholas Moriano. We are the Bears brothers, and we are breaking down all of the matchups heading into Sunday's game against the Atlanta Falcons, the defending NFC champs. And guys, let's move on to a discussion about this Bears offense, and let's start with Mike Glennon. The big talk, at least I've seen this week, is that in his 4 career games against the Falcons, Glennon has thrown 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. But when I see that, I'm like, yes, but a lot of time has passed since then. They're not the same team. Dan Quinn wasn't a head coach. So really, those stats don't matter whatsoever. But starting with number 8, Nick, what does he need to do to start his Bears tenure on the right foot this week?
Well, I don't think he can't compare himself and try to get in a shootout with Matt Ryan, because that's going to lead to a lot of bad things come Sunday. That's a no-no. You can't match up with the reigning MVP. So he just needs to take care of the football, try to get his offense out of bad situations. Can't take any bad sacks. safe throws. With the Bears offense, you need to be able to run the ball, carry out your play fakes on play action, and just complete easy passes. There can't be any mental lapses for this offense to have a good day. It starts with him, and any turnovers, any negative plays is going to put this Bears offense in really bad position. So he's just got to have a clean game.
No, I agree. Okay, so you're talking about a lot of safe throws and, and all that. But my question to you is, are you going to come here on Sunday and say he does dink and dunk all game long and it's not enough? Are you going to come here and complain to me, which I think you would have a right, but since you said that, I want to ask, that he's not pushing the ball down the field a little bit more? Because that's my one concern, is that we don't have a quarterback starting that can push this ball down the field and stretch out this defense.
No, that's very true. But here, I'm gonna give you a stat line real quick.
All right,
and you guys are gonna guess maybe what this could be. 93 receptions, 1,185 yards, 7 touchdowns. Any idea what that could be?
No.
A stat for a receiver.
No. That's the stat for all of the current receivers on this Bears roster. That's my problem. Who is Mike Glennon supposed to throw it to downfield? I know a lot of guys were injured last season. Kevin White, Marcus Wheaton, Kendall Wright didn't play a lot due to the Tennessee offense. But that's a stat line of that's a stat line of White, Wright, Wheaton, Deontay Thompson, Joshua Bellamy. I'm not putting Trey McBride in there. He actually didn't have any receptions last season. That's all of them. So that's going to be my problem. Who's he going to throw to downfield? We don't know what Kevin White is yet. We don't even know if Marcus Wheaton's going to be able to play. That's my problem. I don't know if he's going to be able to throw it downfield, because who is he throwing it to?
Right. For me, going back real quick, with Mike Glennon, but that's a really good point that you brought up, Nick, because honestly, that's scary, because that sounds like a stat line for one receiver.
Of number one receiver on one team. That's exact. I mean, obviously Julio Jones has better stats. There are a lot of guys that have one guy that have better stats than 5 of our guys.
Yeah, that's alarming to say the least. Circling back to Glennon, what I need to see out of him, you hit on a lot of it, Nick, but I think one more thing is just going through his progressions. That's something that we saw throughout the preseason that he just seemed like he was failing to do. He was staring down receivers, and I don't think that doing that on Sunday is going to help this offense whatsoever, because this is an Atlanta defense that actually has a pretty good knack of turning the ball over and generating those turnovers. So if Mike Glennon's staring down his wide receivers on Sunday, it's not going to bode well for the Bears. So he needs to go through his progressions, something which a Trubisky. It's like what he did, because that's, exactly what we need to see out of him. Brandon, over to you. Anything else from Mike Glennon that you want to discuss?
He just needs to keep the ball with the guys that are wearing navy and orange. Obviously, it's important with any game, but with this one more importantly, because Will already touched on, they're a better defense than what they were when last time Glennon played them. And whether he's scrambling and putting the ball on the turf, can't have it. Interceptions, can't have it. But if he's being aggressive and pushing the ball downfield and passing incomplete, I'm okay with that. But he just has to do a really good job of selecting who he's going to throw to and not staring him down the whole time, because this Falcons defense is going to eat that up all day, I think, if he does that throughout the whole game.
Exactly. And if he's pushing the ball downfield, he needs to have that ball placement exactly where either his guy's going to get it or no one's going to get it, because I don't want, like you said, I don't want to see it in the hands of any of those Falcons. Nick, you already mentioned how we don't really know what Kevin White is going to be yet, but how much of this Bears offensive success do you think is going to hinge on Kevin White this year, or maybe this Sunday?
I mean, obviously, if Kevin White has a great season, that makes it easier for the running game. It's going to be able to stretch the field. You can stretch the field vertically. But for this game, I don't think it's going to be more about the receivers. It's going to be what they can do on the ground and how long the Bears can actually run the football on the ground. Because I think in the first half, the Bears will be very effective running the football. But it's in that second half where maybe, you're down a couple of points. You got to start throwing it. So I don't think Kevin White, the receivers, are going to have a big of an impact in this game as they would maybe some other games. But it all depends on, what the Bears are able to do running the ball, because they can keep that Atlanta offense off the field. That makes everything easier. But Kevin White, we'll see obviously the Falcons, they get, what is it? Desmond Trufant, who's a good corner. There's some good secondary players in this Atlanta Falcons defense. So it's going to be tough for any of these receivers to get open. Plus, I just read the stat line of all of them. They're, not very good.
Yeah, no, exactly. But you talked about the Bears running the ball, and honestly, we talked about it on Tuesday. We're talking about it again now because honestly, this is what the game can honestly hinge on, is the Bears' ability to move the ball on the ground in this matchup. And we all know that the Bears' success, even this entire season, is going to hinge or ride on Jordan Howard. The Falcons last year gave up 4.5 yards per rush and over 100 per game, just like the Bears defense. So we're all familiar with that. But what kind of game, guys, do you expect out of the sophomore back this week? And how do you anticipate Jordan Howard in his touches being divided up by like a Tariq Cohen or maybe a Benny Cunningham this week? Brandon, over to you.
I don't know necessarily what the percentages are going to be as far as how they divide it up, but I think we'll see mostly Tariq Cohen and Jordan Howard. And I don't expect Howard to get more than 100-plus yards on the ground. He'll have a respectable showing, but I think that they'll split it up enough to where he's not going to be able to get 100 yards. I know that's one thing we touched on last year quite a bit was we got to get Jordan Howard the ball, got to run the ball, and that's exactly kind of to reiterate Nick's point on Kevin White is that he's not going to be able – that I hope the whole Bears offensive success is not reliant on a receiver because Jordan Howard is way too good of a workhorse to waste it. So let's run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. Dow Loggins, if you're listening, I hope you're listening. Let's run the ball. I don't necessarily see him getting 100-plus yards in this game. I think it'll be divided up enough to where Jordan Howard doesn't get that. But I think Tariq Cohen will definitely get his touches, and I think he'll end up on the highlight reel at some point.
There we go. I like that. Nick, how about you? What are you anticipating from this Bears running game?
I think that in order for the Bears to have any chance at winning this game, they have to commit to it. And that's I know I said that when the score maybe starts to drift away a little bit, they still have to commit to it because that's the best way of keeping. Obviously, it's the best way of keeping Atlanta's offense off the field, and that's their strength. That is the Bears' strength. It's not in the receivers, it's not in their quarterback, it's in the offensive line, and it's in Jordan Howard. He's capable of, with what he's done in the offseason, he's gotten faster. So let's see him break those long runs now and actually finish in the end zone. That's the only way the Bears are going to be able to win is if they can run the ball effectively and keep running throughout the entire game, all 4 quarters, because even if they go down, you can't revert to the passing game that much because it's just there's not enough weapons out there. The Bears need to run the football to win this game.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then going back to Tariq Cohen real quick, I wouldn't be surprised, guys, if we see him out there, not just as a running back, but also, split out wide from time to time and getting him involved a little bit in the passing game because the dude is electric with the ball in his hand. So hopefully we get him in some ideal situations in this game to see what he can do. But guys, let's talk about Nick. You talked about the strength of the Bears offense, and that is the offensive line. And they have a big task this week because they need to slow down Vic Beasley, who led the NFL in sacks last season with 15.5. And he's going to be going up against Bobby Massey, which I think correctly puts a fear in my mind. Plus, we heard from our guest Aaron on the last show that the Falcons are really expecting some good things out of, Dontari Poe. So how do you guys expect the Bears to limit the Falcons' pass rush on Sunday? Keep in mind that we still might have to go without, the Pro Bowl guard Kyle Long, who he did practice today, but in a limited role, and even said that he wouldn't be going out there to play if he knows he's not himself because he doesn't want to hurt this Bears team. So we might see Horns Grasu at center and Cody White here at guard. But either way, the Bears have a tall task in front of them. Brandon, over to you. What do you expect this offense to do in terms of combating that pass rush?
I think the offensive line is the strongest part of this Bears offense, so I'm not too concerned about how they handle the pass rush. I'm more concerned with the Vic Beasley, Bobby Massey matchup that you already touched on, so I don't want to say, who's Bobby Massey going up against this week? I don't think he's going to have that kind of start to a season this year, but it's definitely concerning. And without Kyle Long, I'm not overly concerned either. I think Cody Whitehair will hold his own. I think Grasu will help hold his own, and obviously we know what Josh Sin's going to do. So the middle is still going to be strong. I'm not too worried about it, but you still have to respect the pass rush the same way.
All right, Nick, how about you?
It's going to be tough because when you look at this defensive line, you got guys, or the front seven. I mean, you got Vic Beasley, who was a leading sack leader. Adrian Claiborne from Iowa. I got to shout out to him for being in Iowa, but he's a great pass rusher as well. Dontari Poe. Then Grady Jarrett had 3 sacks in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. They have guys that are playmakers on this defensive line, but they are going against this Bears offensive line who potentially, if the interior guys stay healthy, could have 3 Pro Bowlers. No doubt about it. And, Leno Jr. just got paid, so he's going to want to play like he's one of those top-end left tackles. But it's going to be a great matchup. Like Brandon always says, and we got to just get like a little logo behind you, so it just says, the trenches. But it's going to be a great matchup. curious to see who actually comes out on top for this one.
I think the best way that the Bears can combat this pass rush is going to be with that running game, because if they have a successful running game and the Falcons are starting to stack the box, anticipate, handing that ball off, then we can utilize the play action. And then by doing so, the Bears offense will be in a much better position to avoid that pass rush, because instead of the pass rushers pointing their ears back and going right for Mike Glennon, they're going to be paying attention to what Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen's doing. So that's what I hope the Bears can do. They can honestly limit that pass rush just by pounding the ball on the ground and then coming back with the play action. But guys, anything else that you want to touch on this Bears offense? I know we didn't talk about tight ends, so we can talk about them if you'd like, but anything else that you guys had circled in your notes that you want to mention?
I'll bring up tight ends real quick. I think that's actually who your most reliable receivers are going to be. Glennon had that touchdown pass to Deion Sims in week 3, so I think there's a connection there, and we've seen Zach Miller be a security blanket for every quarterback that the Bears have had under the John Fox era. So I would expect them to be more involved in the offense maybe than some of their receivers.
I mean, that's a definite possibility there. How about you, Nick?
I was looking back at the Falcons' losses from last season. Their 5 losses, and it was against the Bucs, Seahawks, Chargers, Eagles, and Chiefs. And I tried to find a common denominator. What did those teams do in all 5 of those wins that maybe the Bears can potentially do on Sunday to help them win? One, all 5 of those teams were more efficient in the red zone than the Falcons. That's going to be tough to do, but all 5 of those teams found a way to be more effective in the red zone. Another thing was that 4 of those 5 teams were more efficient on third down. So if it's, maybe a third and short, Mike Glenn's got to be able to make that throw if they're not going to run the ball. And then another thing, at 3 of the 5 games, those teams had more rushing yards than the Falcons. So that's another thing that they got to do. So if the Bears can do, maybe like 2 or 3 of those things, they have a good chance of being the Falcons. They're beatable. Obviously they're a beatable team. You saw what happened in the Super Bowl. Whatever happened in the Super Bowl. But, and they also, 3 of those 5 teams, one-time possession. So it's all going to start in the rushing, what the Bears can do on the ground. If they can control the time of possession, run the ball effectively, convert on third downs, the list keeps going on. They have a chance of winning, but it's a tall task.
It is definitely a tall task. All right, guys. So up next, we're going to wrap up the show with talking about the Bears special teams, answering a few questions submitted by the fans, and of course, predicting this game, as well as handing out our bold predictions. But before we do, I want to tell you a little bit about our Pro Football Focus sponsored giveaway, because each Friday, Pro Football Focus is selecting one of our listeners to receive a free Pro Football Focus Edge subscription, which gives you a bunch of goodies, including NFL player grade, snap counts, position ranks, fantasy projections, rankings, tools, and charts, PFF Fantasy, daily football strategy, and also the NFL draft articles, team and player pages featuring Pro Football Focus signature stats. So it's a $40 value. It's great, and you can win this for free. All you have to do so is to review our show on iTunes or Apple Podcasts and leave your Twitter handle in it. And on Friday, Pro Football Focus will pick one of you, tweet you, and let you know that you've won. And it's just definitely do it. We've already had 2 people win. They're picking a new winner tomorrow, Friday. And if you're listening to the podcast on Friday, feel free to review anyway, because you're grandfathered in for the next week and the week after of this giveaway. So just review our show on iTunes, leave your Twitter handle to enter yourself for a chance to win a Pro Football Focus Edge subscription. And again, that's a $40 value, so don't sleep on that. But guys, getting back to the tall task at hand, let's talk about this Bears real quick. Special teams. I don't have much to discuss other than I'm really perplexed why Bryce Callahan is the starting punt returner. Nick, any clue?
I'm right there with you. Well, I have no idea. We saw Tariq Cohen back there, Eddie Jackson. I think that changes as the season goes on. I think you're going to want Tariq Cohen. He's not going to be, an every down offensive player. So I think that's a good way to get the ball in his hands. So we'll see what Bryce Callahan could do. I trust him to make all the fair catches and be able to run return a punt without, any fumbles or muffs, anything like that. So I'm confident. Why? Well, you got to ask the coaching staff. I don't know. We don't know what the Bears are doing.
I may have a solution.
Oh, let's hear it.
Go.
I think that they would have liked to have gone with Eddie Jackson, but since he's got an injury and we don't necessarily know how far he's going to be able to push his injury, I think that they wanted to save him and not hurt him like he did at Alabama, where he had that season-ending injury.
That's fair. My only thing is Bryce Callahan has his own fair of injury issues throughout his career.
Oh, I
so-
would have put someone else other than Callahan, but I just thought that
Cohen.
was the reason
Cohen's
for
the
not playing
guy.
Jackson.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it all plays out. But that was another thing on the depth chart when it came out. I was like, wait, is that a typo? Like Bryce Callahan is the punt returner? Yeah, I haven't seen him back there at all. But okay, moving on, guys. Let's answer a few questions that were submitted by fans before the show. And the first one comes from our actual moderator, Tristan, and he has, if the Bears upset the Falcons this Sunday, he messed up. He meant when the Bears upset the Falcons on this Sunday. What do you think analysts are going to be saying about the game and about the two teams? Nick, I'll go to you.
Maybe they blame it on that, Super Bowl curse, coming off the Super Bowl curse. Most teams are not actually very good. I actually looked back at the past 50 Super Bowl losers. They're 27 wins, 23 losses, but 15 of those losses have come on the road. So the Bears have, they have history in their favor. So maybe that's the case, but I think, it's the first game of the season. Honestly, it's up in the air. Offenses are not going to be as, where the defenses are at this point of the season. So later on, I think Atlanta would catch their, be in a groove. But, I think that would create a lot of national media buzz. It'll be like, oh, what's going on with the Falcons? And the Bears are good. And, who knows?
Yeah, that sounds fair. I think it'll be more about what the Falcons did wrong than what the Bears did right. If the Bears ended up winning. Brandon, over to you for the next question. It comes from Midway Monster on Twitter. And the question is, who do you think is going to cover Julio the most, and will the Bears be able to stop him?
I'd like to say it's Amukamara, but we don't know the extent of his injury and how well he's going to play with an injury if he plays. I expect there to be a lot of help on Julio Jones. So I'm going to say Amukamara, expecting that he plays, but I think he's definitely going to need some help.
Yes. No, I mean, definite help.
Even if he's healthy, I guess you give him help. But
yes, but Quentin Demps, we're looking at you. That's what we brought you here to do. The last question comes from Christian, and he asks, do you expect the Bears to look at guard of the future with Sitton at getting older, or do you think maybe keeping White here at guard with Grasu at center would be potentially a thing? That's a pretty good question, actually. And I think it's a little too soon to actually give a correct answer here because we just don't know how this whole situation is going to play out with Kyle Long. But that said, if Kyle Long can't give it a go on Sunday, fun fact, the Bears don't have any backup guards to be active on this roster. So the Bears are thin there. And I think with Josh Sitton getting older, the Bears are definitely going to be looking to keep adding to that position. But guard of the future, I don't know just yet, but I think you're always looking for the guard of the future or the player of the future at any position at any time. So I'll say yes, because like I just said, they're going to be doing so. And yeah, Sitton's getting older. Kyle Long with his injury status still is a big question mark moving forward. And Cody White here, I still want him at center. I really want him at center. But guys, we talked about a lot of players throughout the entirety of the show. But if you had to go ahead and predict your MVP for this Sunday, who's it going to be and why? Nick, over to you.
If the Bears end up winning this game, the MVP has to be Jordan Howard. He has to be able to, run the ball. Even when there isn't a lane open, there isn't any way of him gaining positive yards. He's got to find a way to get positive yards. So MVP has to be Jordan Howard if the Bears have any chance of winning on Sunday.
Good point there. B, over to you.
We didn't bring up Quentin Demps until I said that Amukamara is probably going to need some help. So my MVP is going to be Quentin Demps because I think he makes a timely turnover in this game, thus giving him the MVP of week 1.
Awesome. For me, guys, I'm going to go with Akeem Hicks. He's going up, like we said, that second-year pro. He's a 6th-round pick, so his talent is a question. He did win the job, but going up against Akeem Hicks is going to be a little bit difficult for him. But I think Akeem, he's going to be that guy on the front, on the front line for this Bears defense to just make those impact plays in the trenches. And I look for him to make some stops in the backfield when it counts. On 3rd down, 3rd and short, and that will take Atlanta's high-powered offense off the field, giving this Bears offense more opportunities, which in terms makes him pretty valuable in my book. But guys, one more thing left on the show, and that is to hand out our weekly bold predictions. And guys, don't hold back. So Nick, over to you. What's a bold prediction for Sunday?
I think a bold prediction would be the Bears somehow, some way, upset the Atlanta Falcons. Late in the 4th quarter, they're still in the game, and they somehow beat the Atlanta Falcons. That's my bold prediction.
I like it. That's definitely bold, especially considering I don't see anyone in the national media picking the Bears whatsoever, which, I mean, I understand it. I mean, why would they? But B, over to you. What's your bold prediction?
I'll take it a step bolder, kind of in that same direction. I was hoping I'd be the first one to make a Super Bowl joke in this episode, but Nick beat me to it a while ago. If the Bears are down 28-3, I think they end up winning the game.
All right. I like it. I like it. For me, guys, I told you not to hold back, and I didn't hold back myself. My bold prediction, Eddie Jackson is going to make 2 interceptions in this game. Matt Ryan's going to want to pick on the rookie and steer away from Quentin Depps. So I think he's going to try to pick on him a little bit too much. And so Jackson is going to make him pay. So Eddie Jackson, 2 interceptions to start his Bears career is going to be my bold prediction. And remember when I said we had one more thing to go? Oh, I lied. We have one more thing to go. We need to pick the game. I forgot to mention that we actually have to pick who we think is going to win this game. So, Brandon, I'll go to you first. What's your prediction for the game?
There's a lot of firepower on this Atlanta offense, and I fully expect what Aaron said on Tuesday. There might be some struggles on that offense with Steve Sarkisian being the new offensive coordinator, and maybe those struggles show in week 1. So I have the Bears taking a very, very, very narrow victory from the Falcons, 21-20.
21-20. I actually think I read somewhere that Sarkisian hasn't even called plays in a game since like 2005. So he might be a little rusty in terms of his play calls and getting into the groove, which could definitely play in our favor. Nick, over to you. What's your prediction?
See, my bold prediction was the Bears winning. My actual prediction is the Bears lose. But I will say, I think the Bears are going to play competitive for the first half. I think the Bears will be within a touchdown, maybe even a field goal. I could definitely see that playing out. But once that second half starts, I think the Atlanta Falcons are just going to light up this Bears defense. It's going to be all because the Bears can't sustain drives on offense. So give you a score, maybe the Atlanta Falcons will score 30, Bears 17.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I can definitely see where you're getting at there, Nick. For me, I have the Bears winning thanks to that ground game and some help from the defense, some old school Bears football. And for me, I have them winning 21-17. And honestly, there's just no way that I can choose the Bears to lose in the season opener. It's been a long off season. I've been looking forward to this game ever since the schedule came out. And I just hope with all my being that they can actually come out there and find a way to come out with that win. But like you said, Nick, even if they go out there and play competitive, that's going to be a great sign for some things to come for this Bears team and showing that they are taking some steps in the right direction. And heading over to real quick to Twitter for our Bears poll, we asked Bears fans, who do you think is going to win this game? And 34% have the Bears winning by less than 6. So Walter Payton's number 34, guys. I think that's pretty lucky if you ask me. Have the Bears winning by less than 6, with the next highest total being the Falcons winning by 6+, with 26% of voters doing that. So yeah, that's pretty much how it's going to be, guys.
I have one last thing.
Go ahead.
It's been 34 years, and I got this from Jeff Joniak. 34 years since the Falcons have beat the Bears in Soldier Field. 34 years.
34 years.
1983 was the last time the Falcons have beat the Bears in Soldier Field, and that was when Walter Payton was playing. 34 years.
34 years and 34%. I think it's a sign.
I think Walter is on their side, guys. And like you said, Walter is playing then. But, yeah, hopefully we can extend that streak and, put them to, I don't know, next time they'll even be here at Soldier Field. So it can definitely extend it quite some time. But it's confident to see that the majority of Bears fans are at least optimistic that we can come out here week 1, kick off the season at home, and come away with a W. At least that's what I'm hoping for. So that's going to do it for this episode. We want to, thank you again for watching or listening live. And we hope that you enjoyed the show. And if you did, make sure to leave us that review on Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to include your Twitter handle to enter yourself in our contest for a free Pro Football Focus Edge subscription. Keep on the lookout for the final 2 podcasts coming out before the game. They're going to be brief. In one, I'll be discussing the 5 matchups you should be watching on Sunday. And that's going to be followed by my 3 keys to the game. You won't want to miss them. And after that, you're going to hear from all of us again immediately after the Bears game on Sunday for our instant analysis and insight for what I hope is a Bears victory. But until next time, bear down, Chicago.